Hey everyone, it's Carissa Wiley at sprinkledwithglitter.com. Thanks for joining me today. Today I am sharing two cards that feature some beautiful abstract backgrounds that were created with a direct-to-paper technique. And I think these are a great way to make colorful and quick cards. And when you're working with products like I'm working with today, that makes it really easy as well. Now I have some new products from the Catherine Pooler April release, including 4 brand new spa ink colors, some Tuscany sequins. I have the notable and quotable stamp and coordinating die set, the Cross Your X's, the Stitch Your Diamonds, and the X Libris die sets. Now these are all available today at catherinepooler.com. I will have them linked in the YouTube description. And I wanted to give you a closer look at the 4 brand new ink colors. Now, the way that I swatch my ink colors is I use a download from jennifermcguireink.com and I cut it apart. And I place it in my MISTI stamping tool, and I actually use the back side of an Essentials by Ellen stamp set called Winterscapes. I just have this large rectangle stamp. The front side has a little bit of a snow pattern, so I just flip it over so I can ink up the solid back side of the stamp and use that to create my own Pantone inspired color swatches. Now, I have a video showing all about this, so I'm gonna put a card up in the upper right hand corner right now. You can check that out. But I wanted to swatch these ink colors out for you today so that you can see them. And I'm starting out with the winter green. This is a beautiful, like minty green, but it has a little bit more gray to it than their other mint colored inks. Next up is the apricot color ink. Now this is going to stamp very bold and bright, but as it dries back, it's going to kind of settle into the paper and kind of knock back just a little because it seems really bold at first. And I'm going to show you these ink swatches dried here in just a minute. Next up is the ginger ink. And this is absolutely beautiful. And I think these colors here, the ginger and the terracotta especially, are going to be gorgeous for fall and Thanksgiving cards. So here's a look at that. It's kind of an brown orange, kind of right in the middle. And then finally we have a terracotta color, which is a really dark red color. It's got a little bit of orange. It's an orangey red is how I would kind of describe it. And so you can see I'm just creating my ink swatches for each of these brand new colors from Catherine Pooler Ink. Catherine Pooler inks are some of my most used inks in my stash. So here's a look at the swatches as they have dried back. I have the winter green, the apricot. You can see that it's a gorgeous color there. The ginger. Doesn't that make you want some Japanese food? And then finally, terracotta here. So some gorgeous new colors, and I cannot wait to experiment with them with other colors. And since I couldn't wait to kind of mix and match them, I went ahead and created my own new color combination. And that features winter green, apricot, shea butter, and clay mask. And I'm going to be using those 4 colors to create my abstract backgrounds today with the direct to paper inking technique that I mentioned earlier. But I'm going to start out by stamping and die cutting some images for my cards. So I have these botanical stamps. These are from the Notable and Quotable stamp set. When I showed a little peek at this stamp set on my Instagram, you guys went crazy about it. There's some quotes from Oscar Wilde and C.S. Lewis and some really great different sentiments. And so I'm going to be using that, and it comes with these 3 botanical, or actually 4 botanical shapes. I am going to prep the surface of the vellum that I'm using today with my powder tool. I have these in my MISTI, and then I'm going to stamp these 3 botanicals all at once using some Versamark ink because I'm going to be doing some heat embossing. Now I flipped my vellum around and I stamped them on the other end as well. So I have 6 total images that I will be heat embossing and die cutting. And I added my white embossing powder, and now I'm using my heat tool to heat set these images. Once those are heat set and they've cooled off just a bit, I'm going to use the coordinating dies, and I'm holding those in place with a little bit of removable tape. And I am going to die cut these images so they're ready to go on my card. So I'm just adding those into my cutting sandwich. I'm running them through my die cut machine, and then I have these beautiful heat embossed images. Now, while I'm at it, I'm also going to die cut this oval frame. This is from the Ex Libris die set, and I think I'm saying that right. I don't know. I feel like it's probably Latin of some sort, and Latin is not the language that I speak besides English. So now it's time to make the backgrounds. And this first direct to paper technique features just some ink pad swiping. And these foam pads from Catherine Pooler really lay down ink nicely. And you can see I'm going in with a soft hand and just kind of dragging stripes of color across this cardstock. And I chose to use a very smooth cardstock for this technique so that there was less kind of grabby places, I guess. And I'm just working my way from the wintergreen to the apricot to the shea butter and then finally the clay mask. Now for my second abstract background, I'm not going to do stripes. I'm actually going to do like areas of color, and I'm doing it actually on some vellum. And this creates a really beautiful effect. So you can see I'm taking each of the ink pads and I'm applying the ink directly to the vellum. And I'm kind of gently buffing off the color after I'm done because I have a lot of ink sitting on the surface. And since vellum is not super porous, it won't absorb right away. Now to intensify this, you can either go back in with the ink pads direct to paper, or you can take a brayer, which technically kind of doesn't make this a direct to paper technique anymore, but you can go in direct to paper again. To add and intensify color to this, I went in with a brayer, added more colors in those areas, and then I heat set it and buffed off the excess. And now I have this gorgeous kind of abstract, really cool boho kind of inspired color palette on this vellum. And I'm going to run that through my die cut machine with a rectangle die and die cut a beautiful little rectangle there that will be the background for my first card. Now I used the same rectangle die to die cut that swipe stripe kind of piece that I created earlier as well. And I am going to set that one aside while I finish up with my vellum piece. Now I wanted to add a little bit of like gold leaf foiling, abstract kind of random areas of foiling to this vellum. I know that's a lot of words to describe what I'm doing. But I'm tired as I record this voiceover, so I'm just trying to find all the right words. I am using a chisel nib zig two-way glue pen. I've applied that kind of using a dry brush technique to the vellum. Then I set that aside and I allowed it to dry. And this glue is going to dry tacky. So I can take my Glimmer champagne colored foil and apply that to that dried glue, and it's going to grab the foil and add these areas of kind of gold leaf, gold foil accents. And I absolutely love that. So I've taken my frame, I've added a couple of those botanical heat embossed elements. I stamped a sentiment from C.S. Lewis that says, "Courage, dear heart," onto a strip of white cardstock and kind of tucked that in with my frame as well. And now I'm applying this stacked up frame to my piece of vellum right there in the middle. And I did add 3 layers of plain white die cuts behind that ivory die cut that I placed on top to give it some dimension. And then I added some foam adhesive hidden behind that frame and added it to my top folding card base. Now for my second card, I used the Cross Your X's cover plate. And I am using this kind of striped abstract background that I created, and I added some of those botanicals to the background along with some gold metallic sparkle twine. And I am going to stamp a sentiment directly on this panel. Now, I was a little nervous about the placement of this sentiment on the panel, and I wanted to try it out before I ruined my project. So I grabbed a piece of acetate and I placed it right over my project. I held it in place with one of my magnets, and then I inked up my sentiment with some VersaFine Onyx Black, or I'm sorry, not Onyx Black, it's Nocturne Pigment ink. And I stamped it onto the acetate. I'm going to be able to wipe this off of the acetate and reuse the acetate again later, but this will give me an idea of how this sentiment will look stamped on this panel. Now, once I did a little adjusting and got it into a little bit better placement, I inked up this sentiment with the Catherine Pooler Twilight ink and stamped it right onto that panel. So I'm going to add this panel onto my card base using some foam adhesive, and you can see I layered up the little cross your X's background die behind that, and I'm going to finish both of these cards off with some sequins. And I pulled out some of the most gorgeous, like apricot iridescent sequins from this Tuscany sequin mix. They are so beautiful, and I'm just adding those onto my card front using a little bit of liquid glue. And that finishes off my 2 cards for today, featuring some really fun direct-to-paper abstract background techniques. I really hope you enjoyed these projects, and I hope you enjoyed the look at the brand new Catherine Pooler April release, along with their beautiful new ink pads. I think you're going to want to check these out, and if you do, I will have links to the featured products used in these projects in the description at YouTube, or you can head on over to my blog at sprinkledwithglitter.com. I will have that linked below as well. Over there, you'll find more still shots, more information, and a complete list of supplies. Thanks for stopping by and spending time with me today. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to give this video a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notifications here on my YouTube channel so you don't miss any of my paper crafting and card making video tutorials shared here. And if you loved this video, I would love it if you would share it with a friend. Thanks again for stopping by, and until next time, I hope you have a fabulous day. Hey, thanks for sticking around to the very end. You know, if you've made it this far, you are one of my favorites. If you want to subscribe to my channel, go ahead and click the button on the left side of the screen. And here's a couple more video tutorials I thought you might enjoy, including that ink swatching video I mentioned earlier.